that is, again, something that can be extremely disruptive in finance, because it basically means that now the crowd can define the market, the crowd can potentially define the prices. And this comes back to something which, so people a lot of times call me a bit crazy for saying this, but the social web and the age of social networks it is really, and we're still at the very beginning of it, is as disruptive as, you know, the age of electricity, the age of information, starting with computer systems, because it suddenly connects the entire, any person with a smartphone together to create really the wisdom of the crowds. And everything we do is much bigger than we can currently see. This is actually, so who here watches a bit of Star Trek? It does a FinTech, so I assume there's at least a couple of geeks that know what the Borg is. No? Borg? Okay, a couple of people. Okay, so the Borg is the hive. So everybody's working together as a hive. So the social web is bringing us to a place where people can actually cooperate together extremely efficiently. And to understand the impact is also to look at what a lot of people actually miss, is the fact that the status change very rapidly. This is something actually very interesting. So we see here the rise of China, and everybody's talking about the rise of China. But what's really interesting is if you look backwards to 1820, you actually see that China was the largest economy in the world. And we're just getting back to the same point. And these changes can happen very fast. So everybody knows what the Wintel duopoly was. Windows and the Microsoft and Intel basically duopoly over information systems. I see IBM missing here. But within the last just 5 years, this completely changed to Android and Apple dominating the mobile market, and mobile becoming the fastest growing app in the market. And what I'm trying again to say here is that these changes happen very fast, and that's really what's really interesting in FinTech, is that these changes still have not disrupted the financial ecosystem. They have not disrupted financial institutions and how people consume financial applications over the web. So what does it mean? And here I'll talk a bit about eToro. This means that finance can suddenly, first of all, be accessible to anybody. And being accessible is not only creating a website that's accessible for people if they actually want to trade, but it's also creating the viral hooks and actually getting the Candy Crush magic into finance, really getting a lot of people into becoming investors in the markets. And the biggest problem is finance today in the entire ecosystem is antisocial. So most people are afraid of finance. Most people think finance is complicated, is boring, is intimidating, and somebody else should take care of their finance instead of them. And originally, finance actually started from social behavior. So Jonathan's Coffee House was a place where all stockbrokers got actually kicked from the Royal Exchange because they were rude, and they just went to Jonathan's Coffee House to actually trade and deal with stocks. And Jonathan's Coffee House became what is today the London Stock Exchange. And that is to show that a coffee house basically became the exchange. So the London Stock Exchange still have just a couple of hundred members. These are, maybe if we look, it's actually the same members that sat in the coffee house. So the big difference is now this coffee house is the entire web, right? So instead of just 400 or 1,000 people getting into the coffee house, suddenly you can get 1 million people, 100 million people, or 1 billion people on a social network. And the biggest issue is that most financial institutions don't really have an incentive to drive this innovation. Even quite the contrary. Banking ecosystem basically was built to digitize money, and they would like to keep themselves as the owners of digitizing money. And right now, we're seeing a shift again, very much related to Bitcoin and digital currencies, monopolies over money, which are being disrupted. And that is because finance today is really not a consumer product. There are almost no real consumers playing finance. And that is what I believe is the biggest disruptive force, is consumers, the entire consumer revolution over the internet, and that is driven by internet DNA, which is openness, simplicity, focus on user experience, what every startup and every book of VCs or entrepreneurs will talk about, focus on the user experience and on the consumer. And that really what drives eToro to our vision, to create a global marketplace for everyone to trade and invest in a simpler and transparent way. We have today 3.5 million users on eToro who basically open their account and through their account can actually buy stocks from different markets around the world as easy. So when we started, we said it's easy, should be easy to buy a barrel of oil as it is to buy a book on Amazon, and that's what we've done. But the more interesting part of eToro is we also enabled people to share their entire portfolios. So every person on eToro has his profile, and people can actually navigate and find people from all over the network, from the 3.5 million users we have, and see their investment performance, see their gains, see how many people are copying them. And every person in our network, you can actually follow them and get updated every time they make an investment, and you can actually copy them. So if there's a great tech investor in eToro, you can actually invest $1,000 in that investor and mimic his portfolio. So if you invest $1,000 in him and he invests 10% of his funds in Google, when you start investing $1,000 in him, you just mimic his entire portfolio and buy $100 worth of Google stock in your portfolio. And that's really how we brought social into the investment space. What's also interesting is we're seeing a lot of discussions and how we see different stocks basically target new audiences. So this is a great example. The majority of discussions on our Manchester United page, so every stock has its page where people actually talk about the stock. People are actually talking about the team. People are actually fans of the team suddenly buying the stock, and this really, for us, is the convergence between real people's interest and the fact that now they can be investors. So every investor, every basically fan of Manchester can now actually own a stock. Every person who likes Apple products can now actually own Apple shares. But think about how many investors that means there are out there. So every Facebook user can now potentially also own a piece of Facebook. So if those 1 billion people each only invest $50 in Facebook, that would probably double the existing market cap of Facebook. And that's exactly what we're seeing in eToro, is people's affinity to brands is what brings them to invest in the markets. And people can actually see what other people are doing on the market. So every person has his profile. So this is a profile of a person out of Ireland. He explains, he uses a mix of technical and fundamental analysis to trade different commodities and currencies and indices, as you can see here in your portfolio. And based on that, you can make decisions of who to basically invest in. And what we really like about eToro is the fact that the social discussion is becoming the key driver for people's decisions to invest. So it's no longer only the fundamental and technical analysis, but it's the discussions and suddenly the social discovery that leads people to make their investments online. And we're also seeing quite interesting phenomena that suddenly involve other new Finance 2.0 things, which is, in this example, there was the storm in the Philippines, the typhoon, and then a couple of users started saying they'll be donating 70% of their profits. And they started actually, so somebody from the Philippines started this, and you can see someone from Singapore, Poland, and India actually joining the discussion, offering the same, and offering actually a link for people to basically donate their trading profits into people from the typhoon. So this is an example of creating a completely other vertical of finance directly from their investment account from eToro. but we're seeing also interesting things that, again, one day can actually potentially impact how companies behave, which is people, for example, on the Netflix page, are talking about what would be the next big show of Netflix. Will they bring in something? So everybody knows House of Cards. First of all, it's a great series, a great success, but it's based on actually a British series, right? So they actually brought something from existence and just relaunched it. And people are talking about, actually, this is me down there, I'm talking about maybe bringing back to the future. But potentially what's really interesting here is that if you look at how Netflix decided to bring House of Cards, they actually analyzed their existing ecosystem and found out that a lot of their audience loves Kevin Spacey, loves political thrillers, and love the director. And they actually looked at that data and they said, okay, let's create the series House of Cards. So they were looking at the social data that defined the series, which after that, defined our culture and what we see. But potentially people here owning Netflix stock can actually then impact what Netflix are actually launching. And these converge. So this is a discussion about Amazon and eBay potentially adding Bitcoin support. So suddenly this goes on the page of Amazon to Amazon investors, to Bitcoin investors, and to eBay investors, to Bitcoin and eBay investors on the platform, and basically creating a discussion between these people who potentially never connected on eToro, but suddenly this piece of news connects between them. And what we're seeing, and this I believe is really the holy grail of what I believe is the key to disrupt finance, is with research with MIT, we've been able to prove consistently that people using the wisdom of the crowds in our social network are actually profiting in the market significantly more than people just trading on their own. And MIT's study, so you can see this is the green part here, and MIT's study is talking about something, and again, this is still on an academic level, they call sustainable trading, which is the potential of users to create basically asset classes which are based on social trading and social information, which can create consistent returns without really any relation to the fundamental asset class. So these are the types of things will probably take years to actually become a reality. The MIT group actually studying the eToro data, then opened the hedge fund and started doing it. But I think that's really the core of disrupting known facts in finance just by creating a lot of social information into the web and then enabling people with tools to use that information for their own benefit. And I won't talk now about Bitcoin because I think I'm out of time. And I also saw from the agenda that you have some great Bitcoin evangelists talking here later on. So that's it. Thank you very much for having me. Sure. Any questions? No questions?
Where are you guys at? Are you planning on IPO or what's the future for this company? You're going to get $50 million what's the plan for?
Well, right now we're very focused on scaling the network and just scaling the audience as fast as possible. I mean, in the future, we do envision an IPO, but it's not something on the short roadmap.
Question about the trading, because I've seen that before, but I've never heard it explained as well as that. Are you seeing any sort of celebrities or fund managers in the future coming out of this? Because if you look at it from a distance, what you've actually got there is a sort of crowdfunding or crowd-assessed fund management. So the question is, well, if you can copy that into three, why would you pay 1,500 basis points to a fund manager in the traditional firm? But play that the other way around. Are they looking at this and saying, actually, there's some good guys here who've got a track record with the investment proposition thesis they're working against, you can see the signals that actually these are recruitment targets for those firms. Are you seeing this crossover or anything happening there, or are they just completely unaware?
So we've seen a couple of fund managers trying to recruit people on our network. It's actually quite difficult for them because a lot of, one of our top popular investors is, from a small city 1 hour out of Barcelona. He has almost 7,000 people copying him. He's trading great the currency markets, but he's not, he's not in London, so he's not where these fund managers usually are. And we actually pay based on the number of people being copied. So if somebody has 5,000 people copying him, he can get up to $10,000 from us. So we actually basically pay them eventually to become sort of fund managers of the future.
The effect you mentioned for Waze about equalization, basically, right? So people balance out the market. Isn't that a problem in your market? Doesn't that kind of reduce returns with the fact that kind of people will, water flows downhill, as you said, they'll...
Since about 99% a long way to go until this actually diminishes returns for retail. First, it actually just potentially brings those profits. Our envisioned future of retail. We've done the calculation. We'll need to be
we processed €2 billion during across 6 different countries with customers in a few other. There's also a lot of talk about making a lot of data available from those accounts, because one thing banks are very good at in the last year, but not growing at a rate of about 21% a year. So it's an important trend as well. So there is, I suppose, a question about whether innovation is coming from Brussels and politicians, or whether it should be coming from different sources. And I think the latter is certainly true, but I think you can leverage what's happening at a systemic level to do some pretty incredible stuff. So, just to go back to some of the names that we think about when we look at innovation and payments. So these are all the players that kind of come to mind. So you've got people who are initiating transactions based on your Amazon account or your PayPal account. You've also got people who are related to the conference today and using mobile phones to initiate payments and manage transactions. So all really good stuff. And I'll come back to that in a second. But if we go back to basics, in terms of what is a payment, so it's all about moving value from A to B. So I want to make a payment to you or receive one from you. So that's that's an important I suppose building block. And then the fundamental building blocks that lie below all of that are old well-established systems. You've got things like credit transfers, so just a payment like you receive your salary through, direct debits, how you pay your bills, and also obviously credit cards and debit cards. And if we just focus on the electronic payment types, we've got a group here of core payment methods. But the thing about core payment methods is actually that they are systemically important. So they're very large systems, and they are critical to the economy. So if the clearing systems in a country go down, you've got a huge economic situation, and it becomes quickly a political situation. So that's something that creates a need for regulation. So these schemes tend to be governed heavily, and that means that they're not subject to rapid innovation. So that's very deliberate, and we don't want to change how the underlying plumbing works too much, because you risk disruption by doing that. However, what is good is that these systems sometimes can be tapped into, and you can build layers of innovation on top of those. So if you look at these innovators that exist today, and the ones which are emerging all the time, they actually just leverage the core payment methods in every way. And then so these participants basically take the most of what's already there, allow the transfer of value, but then they create value of their own by either providing convenience, so the convenience of using mobile payments rather than having to go into your bank and try to initiate a payment, or else they offer security. Those two drivers are very significant in their own right, but I think it's important to remember that they are built upon the core payment methods, and also that sometimes they are limited by what the core payment methods offer them. So if you have a mobile phone application which is great in the UK, that's excellent. You've got you can prove it. You can tap into a market with a population of, let's say, 60 million. But if you can apply that same technology to another payment underlying system, core payment system, and then you can possibly tap into a much bigger population pool overnight and expand your market. So if you want, you could think of this as if you want to draw an analogy to Apple's App Store. So the App Store basically provides the underlying kind of APIs, the underlying core components of the phone and so on, and then you have app developers who built a whole variety of innovations and widgets, for example, on top of that. Okay, so that said, in terms of these core payment methods not changing often, they have changed once recently, and it's a once in a generation event. So this is where that SEPA initiative kicks in again. So SEPA basically rewrote the underlying credit transfer and direct debit systems for Europe and forced everybody to move across to those, and is currently working through a lot of change on the debit card and credit card side. So what we're seeing here is that the actual ground rules have been changed at its core, and then the rest of the layers need to be adapted as you'd expect. So where we see this, and this is where we see a lot of partnership potential, is that that leads you on to a requirement to tap into these core payment systems. And as I mentioned earlier on, so the Centennial is one of the providers who built a community around this underlying infrastructure. So community banks and corporates who basically use us in order to make to avail of SEPA and initiate those transactions. However, we think that's just the beginning, and there's a layer of innovation that can go on top of that. Now, Centennial itself is hoping to add quite a few innovations in that layer, but actually we're equally excited about working with other parties and partners who could create innovations in areas that we, frankly, aren't specialized in. So, for example, mobile. We're not going to build the next great app, but we would very much like to provide the underlying foundations to help that app get into a much bigger audience more quickly. So that's that's a lot of what we're doing, and this is what we've talked about, and refer to as kind of co-creating value. And we feel that both parties in that kind of partnership can really accelerate each other. That's essentially where we are now. And I think the other thing is that we are also dealing with a landscape which is changing. So those foundational blocks are actually evolving, and what we can do today, in terms of initiating payments, is only expanding to actually access the full account and the full bank account. So that's also going beyond just the initiation of payments, but also being able to work with partners on the, for example, the identity aspects of a bank account as it can be leveraged. So that's what I wanted to cover. So any questions?
What degree do you think set to specifications for bank account access?
Yeah, I think it's a challenging time for Visa and Mastercard actually, and you've also seen a lot of regulation, setting the fees around interchange for Visa and Mastercard. I think if they open up the bank accounts, the actual potential for payments and other activities to be drawn to that is very high, because actually these core payment methods, if you avoid the cards, the core payment methods are actually very cost effective. So if you're pushing credit transfers and direct debits from a bank account, you're doing it at a fraction of the cost that Visa and Mastercard charge. So I think if you obviously what Visa cards and Mastercards have is a huge convenience factor. You can walk into pretty much any store and use one. If you can get some aspect of that built on top of SEPA, you can really tap into it. I do see the when we're talking about trillions of payments, or trillions of euros of payments moving on an annual basis, we do see draw payment credit. Are growing, at about 7% per year, and so it's how payments are made. Clearly, I think form. while to give and text to pay, etc. Still exists as a product. Then went to RBS. Then mobile fitting clients, big guys who I like to say pay the bill, and small guys who feed the soul. It's not going away. So I'm going to through that are enabled by all these. Okay, so that what's it? What are the banks doing? years did it take to get again, compared to any other is ridiculously fast, but the world is changing fast. Big guy. That's the one that can kill the whale. If you're a diver, that's good news for you. One is I am driving a super tanker and I'm fully loaded. People photos. It says, 10 ways in North America. Can you do? ever. Devices. Penetration of the human has
Five. Like recently, have we every smartphone now? A number of industries that historically have not been much affected by now. In a position to be transformed by it. This is Mark Andreessen. Now he's an investor. Make the mistake of sort of mental paradigm in history very unlikely correct. Apply through some this is a photo taken with Instagram, which is why I like it. And their internet guys, the green guys are millions of unbelievable. This is a slide you just saw, eToro. It's the only point that I throw it in there is that it's incredible how fast it is a double-edged sword. Draw Something had 9. Million, which was a decrease. It has 9.1 million. I think it's amusing because people say, "Oh, poor Draw Something." I'm like, they still have 9 million users after 7 months of existence. Doritos and Doritos shell and they put it around a Taco Bell. McDonald's, they have sold the launch of these. I want to be clear. On this, that if you take a Dorito and wrap it around, oh, it's even more. Work. It isn't just a channel. It's a technology-driven culture. I have a lot of other physical things. Pass. Very we start coins in actually know when I say take a pile of this. They don't have the today, position present asset. There's gold backing our the only reason a pound's worth a pound is because leaves and Bitcoin I mean, very true. Are completely in love with our devices. We have an intimate relationship with our phones that we haven't had before. I one says of nearly every aspect of personal pervasive history. Smiling. their interest used to be the wanted to go to the vaults and technically but moved the life on some caches here if you have to talk or a house or education. Probably going through our in commerce. And so what do I mean about they tend the number of devices to the time, 24/7. If you want to have an entertaining conversation, someone up and they just go. That's it. You know, this is channels. Screens and different um, that we're at the right about Pakistani Pakistani